Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another fabulous episode of the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, Ben and I are going to be chatting a little bit about ropes, knots, everything in between. And I guess first and foremost, Ben, so we get it out of the way, well, not get it out of the way, but let's approach this monster first. This weekend, we recently just came back from the Nova Scotia Bushcraft Gathering. So everybody that was out there seemed to have a wonderful time. Thank you to all of the people that made that possible and organizing it and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a great time. If you missed it, you missed out. Definitely look for it next year. You can find it at the Nova Scotia Bushcraft Gathering Facebook group. If you can't find that group, just look for Nova Scotia Bushcraft and you can link back from there. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody that made that possible. And great job, guys. It was a lot of fun.
It was, and I had great fun teasing you with pictures and stories right before you got there.
Yes, so Ben got to stay there in a whole extra day, which was great. We actually have a video from there that I am in the process of finishing up. I just don't want it processing while we're doing our podcast here because I worry it might conflict and we'll have, all that craziness of glitching and whatnot. So I'll process it once we're done chatting, and hopefully that'll be uploaded either tonight or tomorrow, and you guys can view that too. It'll be on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page, and there will be a link to it, hopefully, on our actual webpage, which you see down below there, which is atlanticbushcraft.ca/podcast. If you don't want to put the /podcast on it, you don't have to. It'll redirect you, and everything is grand. But in any case, to the meat and potatoes, off tonight's topic, Ben. We are going to be chatting about ropes and knots, and I mean, it's a pretty broad topic, so we're going to try and hammer as much of it out as we can in the time we got. Because, I mean, you
Yeah,
and I started chatting about it today, and we're like, oh, well, you were actually like, holy crap, this would make a great topic, and I completely agree, because we chatted for a good couple hours on this. All I was doing was just looking for am steel.
yeah. So I mean, this was the thing. We had a totally different topic that we will get to later, and we started talking. You asked a couple of questions about Amsteel, and then, well, I geeked out almost as much as you did on the beginning of the video. And I do want to throw a teaser in there. There's a guest that really makes it special, so I can't wait to see that come out. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But yes, ropes, string, Amsteel. Amsteel is a bit of a passion of mine. When I got into hammocking, Amsteel, everyone was talking about it. That's what they make the whoopee slings from, the UCRs. Incredible stuff. Very lightweight, made of Dyneema, I think is the name of the rope.
That sounds about right from all the research I did today. Mind you, I
Dyneema.
relied heavily on your expertise.
Yes. So I'm just wondering about pronunciation, but anyways, yeah, and it comes as thin, I think, as 1.75 millimeters, and as big. I think it goes into the inches. Like seriously, we were discussing this just before. It has the exact same strength rating as a similar gauge steel wire. Braided wire, aircraft cable, as some people know it as. So, through those discussions, we started talking about how you work with it, what you can do with it. You don't necessarily tie it in knots. You can, but you can splice it back into itself, make adjustable loops. So pretty neat stuff. But that just opens up the beginning of the world of what exists there in rope. And I think we all have some favorites. But when you think about it, all the stuff we use rope for, I mean, your guidelines, your hammock suspensions, to just tying up pieces of wood to make shelters, it's something that I think every bushcrafter, everyone who's in the woods has tons of it in their bags and varying types.
Oh man, I don't go into the woods without. Well, this is just the stuff out of my pack. There's paracord, two types of paracord, and some Kevlar line, and I'm looking for Amsteel. So,
and we're checking something out. If our inquiries work out, we will probably link you guys up to the best price we can find.
And it's good if we get it.
It's yeah. Oh, I mean, Amsteel, you get a good price on Amsteel. I've been buying it from a local place here, Binnacle, but honestly, at close to 70 cents a foot, you don't want to buy a ton. All right. So we're looking for better prices. If anyone finds one, please send us the link. I've taken stuff as big as this. I think this is 3/8. I know people take even bigger. this is in case I ever needed to repel them something, I guess. Um, or moose hunting if I need to hang up animals. Uh,
I use actually that cheap rope that you had there that we were talking about before. Yeah, the what is that? That's
Dollar store, hollow braided poly rope from dollar store.
I
I
use
have
that a
actually
lot when I'm hunting.
I've made whoopee slings out of this. It works.
And that shouldn't stretch either. So, for anybody that's wondering, the reason I keep throwing the name Amsteel around or Kevlar rope, is the properties of that rope. The main property, as Chris already mentioned in the comments there, is it doesn't stretch, or it has a very low percentile of stretching. I think it's something ridiculous, like 1.5% or 2% possible stretch, but outrageous weights on it too. I flashed up the Kevlar line I got here, and I mean, that's next to a pen. Just hold on 1 second. I think I killed this. There we go. And I should be back. Am I back, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay, but just give me 1 sec here. Where? You can hear me though?
I can hear you. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Is there a reverberation? Because all of a sudden you're coming through the stereo speakers now.
I'm not hearing anything, but I have sound turned off on mine, so I don't.
Anybody that's
Great.
listening, can you guys hear like a weird echo going on there? Because I may have to try and figure out what's going on here. But any case, yeah, wicked strength to Kevlar rope. I mean, just wicked. This here is less than the size of a pen, and I mean this is 1,000 pound rated. Just insanity.
Yeah, and I mean I've tested this stuff to the max. We've had two, let's say, well over 250 pound individuals sit in some of the hammocks I've got, and these ropes have not stretched, not damaged, not taken any. And I think that was 7/16. No, 1/8. I usually buy 1/8 when I was doing them. Um, and all my hammocks have Amsteel suspension systems right now.
Yeah, you were mentioning about that before, and I never did have a chance to look it up, unfortunately.
Yeah. So they generally come in spools, I think, of 180 or 90 feet, and it's the same stuff as Amsteel. It's just a much smaller gauge. And I said I made these for my daughters. I was able to splice slings out of them. Just got the feedback in. Your message.
Yeah, just some stuff popping up here. So,
Perfect.
uh,
Yeah, and if anyone wants to make anything with this, there's some awesome videos, way better than we'll be able to describe. But before we went in, I mentioned something to you, and I'll just throw it in if anyone wants to look one up or flash one on in the comment section. Soft shackle is something you can make of this hollow braid that's essentially a carabiner made out of rope. And the way it works is there's a loop that opens up and there's a knot on the other end, and the knot won't pull through the root, so you stick it together and you can lash things together. I've carried, I put them on my boats. I have some on my packs. Unfortunately, I think they're all not in the house. Um, so it's a neat system you can make. And when you tie the rope as tight as I can in that knot, it's literally like a rock. That's how I test it. Make sure it's hard enough. You bounce it off the table and it should sound just like a steel ball bearing hitting the table. So something to look up, play with. Um, Amsteel, wonderful stuff, great rope. It also has no twist. Did we capture that?
uh, what are you looking to capture there? I'm still trying to mess with my sound settings here, to be honest with you.
There's no torsion on it. Like a lot of rope, your braided poly rope, a lot of it has a tendency to twist one way or the other. But the braids are braided left and right on this.
Just hold on a sec there, Ben. For some reason, they can't hear you now.
Let me know if you hit my back.
Uh, we are running blind like normal. Just give me 1 sec here. Default. We want speakers. There, say something, Ben.
How's it going?
There we go. You're back, buddy.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we won't go all the way back, but if you compare, I think you guys call this bank line or the masonry line. So it's the same thickness as this lash it stuff I got here, but it's all just one rope twisted in the same direction. So when you put strain on it, it tends to have a twist, torsion to it. This stuff will have absolutely none. It pulls straight every time. Why it's good in wenches. While we're mentioning it, you keep this stuff, the little mason. I can hear you. Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm here.
You still there, Ben? Ah, what happened here? What is going on? Here, let's just do this.
I have to give you the axe, buddy.
There, I pulled my headset out. Whatever I
Uh,
did to that when I tripped the wire, it's going nuts. So we're just gonna run without it and see how this works.
okay, so can anyone report if they hear both of us, one of us, or none of us?
Chris, you're a faithful guy. Are we both there, buddy? Well, I see stuff flipping, so I'm gonna assume we're both here. Keep going,
Okay.
Ben.
Yeah, I'm completely lost now. No, I mean, okay. So we're talking about rope. Look, we got the AM steels, your space age materials, your Kevlar stuff. You have kind of your masonry line. I often use that for like guidelines and stuff. Quick, cheap, and I don't mind if I lose it, break it. But still takes enough to hold the tent nice and taut. And everyone's favorite, for some reason, paracord, which I have a ton of. But honestly, I don't find I use as much as I'd think I would.
Now, for paracord, I carry a lot of paracord. I'm a big believer into a certain degree of paracord. Like I got the paracord bracelet. I carry 2 rolls of it in my bag, but I use it more for building than anything. Like if I'm lashing together a tripod, maybe tying out a tarp, something like that that I actually want a little bit of flex in, or a little bit of flex really won't matter. But that's pretty much all I do for with my paracord now. Another reason I'm looking for the AM steel is I'd like to keep a short length of it in my bag or make a bracelet out of it, same thing, so I could use it for a bow drill. Because with paracord, as it stretches, it actually tears apart really bad too. And that's one of the biggest drawbacks I found with using paracord as a bow drill string, right? You get
Yeah.
maybe 3, 4 uses out of it, and then it just completely goes to snot.
So AM steel I find kind of slick. Would that give you the friction you want?
Don't know, but at least if I can get a hold of it, I can try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The problem I have with paracord, I guess the general problem I have with it is it has a lot of stretch. You can pull it nice and tight, and you come back an hour later and it's hanging kind of limp. Um, it does have the advantage you got your 7 strands and stuff, and this stuff I got in my hands right now. This is the is it Outbound or whatever Canadian Tire brand
Oh, that's the
fire
fire
cord.
string, right?
Yeah, it's got the one red fiber in there that lights. I played with it. It lights pretty easy. It's pretty cool. It's a great gimmick, and I think it actually cost me less than regular paracord. So I'm not complaining. But no, I honestly, like you say, like tying off a tarp, I have been using a lot of bank line or not the mason line. It's just cheap. You get a roll. I think it's like 100 feet on it, and you get pretty colors: pink, yellow, green, you name it. I usually try to go with something relatively bright so it shows up. Um, I don't know about you, but I trip over guidelines.
Oh my God, that's why I got this stuff. It's got that, I don't know if it'll show up there, but you can kind of see the white flake in it.
Yeah,
It's got the
yeah,
reflective stuff, so when I'm wearing my headlamp, it'll actually show up, because otherwise I'll be tied up on it. And
yeah,
Chris makes a good point. Tarred bank line doesn't seem to stretch as much also. Good point. That's the holy grail of bank line when it comes to bushcrafting, I guess. When most people talk about bank lines, they are referring to the tarred bank line. The downside to the tarred bank line is it'll bind in on itself because it is kind of a tar covered rope. And that causes it to stick a little bit. It makes a tiny bit of a residue, but the big thing is it binds in on itself really hard, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. If you're wanting to put something up permanently, it's great. If you're wanting to put something up and take it back down, well, you're definitely going to cut that.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing, though. It's the tarred stuff is hard to come by, from what my experience.
Yeah, you got to buy it online. It's the only place I found it really. Or some hunting shops will have it because it's they use it for duck decoys. I've
Yeah,
seen it for
and
duck decoys.
I do hear sometimes, like once a year, people say they found it at the dollar store or the army surpluses. Um, but it seems rare and hard to find. But I agree with you. You know, you tie a knot in it, it's pretty well a permanent fixture now. That's great. But it's relatively cheap enough that you don't mind cutting it. If you're just tying out your ropes, you're setting up a shelter for a week, and at the end of the week, and you go back and you're out $5 with the line, you're probably not out that much.
Yeah, not a big deal. Now paracord on the other hand, the price on that just keeps going up. When I bought my first two rolls, I think I got them for $7-8 each. And I
Yeah,
just looked online, and the Army Navy surplus stores, they're up to like $15-16 a roll for 30 meters, which is roughly 90 some odd feet, 100 feet.
yeah. So, I mean, it definitely has its purposes, its uses. I mean, I got this bright orange stuff, and I do use it, and I do make the bracelets. My daughters love making the bracelets and stuff. And it's good stuff. It has its purpose, its uses. Like I said, though, you can pull those inner strands out and basically multiply the amount of rope you have by 8, 7 strands plus the outer shield. So that's a good use.
And paracord is relatively tough. I mean, 550 paracord is supposed to be rated for 550 pounds, or you can get the 710. Does that sound right? 710, the 9-strand stuff?
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, I said I got the thicker stuff. It's nice and soft, easier on your hands if you got to climb up and down stuff. Like when we did that hill, something like this would be real nice to make your hand grips out of. But it's essentially an essential part of bushcrafting. And we talked about this, I think, one time before. You can go in the woods and you can make your own string. It can be done. The caveat is it is intensive. It's labor intensive. It is time intensive. You don't do that. You don't make 50 feet of rope in a couple hours.
Even when you get good at it, the amount of effort you put in, it's a lot for what you get out of it. If you don't have anything else, yes, there is definitely methods like, what's it called? Double twisted or reverse 2-ply cordage.
Yeah.
That's a very common one, or a straight braid or a cross braid. But once again, you have to find the materials, harvest the materials,
Process.
braid it, and hope you don't break it in the process. All for a couple feet of rope that took you a couple hours to make, even if you're good at it. Like I've seen people, if they have all their materials together, they can whip it out pretty fast. But you still got to factor in getting the materials and processing the materials to start working with anyway. Now, and this stuff, even at $15 a roll for 100 feet of it, I'm going to throw that in my backpack and I'm going to be good. Because I can make rope. I don't like making rope.
No. And that's the thing. In an emergency situation, having it on hand is great. In a non-emergency situation, it's the other situation you're thinking of. If you're trying to cover ground, you get to camp, say 6 o'clock in the evening. You got 2 to 3 hours before it's starting to get dark. You don't want to spend your time trying to make the rope to make a ridge line. Like, you want it now. And all these methods, like from the cheapest rope to the most expensive rope here, I mean, you can do it. and you can set it up. You can hang your gear off it. You keep it up and dry. You keep things clean. You can secure some stick skidder, make a tripod. You can make a whole structure with only a few feet of rope if you know what you're doing. But without it, it takes a lot more skill. Like I would almost call it a force multiplier. Would you not agree? Like,
Yeah, I would agree entirely. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that before I go off on a tangent.
but yeah, it opens up a world of things. It can help you repair your gear. It can help you secure loads. It can help. There's no end of stuff I use rope for, and you're, you know, then you get into how do you secure your rope? You say you got quite a bit of a knot knowledge there.
Yeah, knots for me was always, I hate to say a passion. It's not really a passion, it was just something I was always good at. I picked it up through the fire department and it always just stuck with me. And I have this uncanny ability to make a knot 2 or 3 times, and I typically remember how to do it. Couldn't tell you what the knot's called, but I can repeat the knot when I know it needs to be used. But as we were chatting, before we came and started the podcast, like I boil almost all the knots I use down to in the woods to maybe 5, 6 knots total. That's not including like joining two ropes. I consider that something else, but actual knots that I use to tie things up, I've boiled it down to like literally I use 3 all the time, and then there's a couple others I throw in, and yeah, and it always seems to serve my purposes. Now I know a plethora of knots, but some of them are complicated. They're fancy. They do the job. Like some knots might do a job better, but you may also be 5 minutes, making this big fancy knot when you can flip something out in 10 seconds.
Yeah, the main thing I find with a knot is it needs to be secure. It needs to hold the strain that you're going to put on it. And ideally, if you're trying, because I hate cutting rope and I hate having to throw rope away. Ideally, it's going to be something you can untie with relative ease.
Yeah, being able to retrieve a rope is a big thing in my book too. Well, as you know, I try to recover everything when I'm out in the woods. When we were tearing down, I was on doing my knots and rolling everything back up and throwing it in my pack because I just reuse it. Why cut it and waste it if you can just reuse it? And all you need to do to reuse it is wearing yourself a couple of basic slip type knots that'll come out with very little effort or minimal effort.
Yeah, and I've kind of developed, and I'm not saying for the first time because I'm sure they're old knots, but I've developed a few methods that I tend to use over and over again because it works for me, and it gets some it allows me to tie something securely and undo it quickly. And I'm sure there's proper names on it. I just know what I do, right? But one I can name because I know the name is the prusset knot. Do you use that for a lot? I use that for especially like tightening up my tarps and stuff. And
okay, so it's the knot I'm thinking of. That's the one you loop through 3 times. It'll slide along a line if you push it at the base of the knot. But if you pull from the loop of the knot, it won't go anywhere. It acts like a brake.
Yeah, and I find that's perfect. Like if I got a couple of guidelines off, I'll usually make a prusset knot, hook it to my tent peg or my tree or whatever I'm hooking to, and then I'll just adjust it that way.
Yeah, I use it a lot with ridge lines. If you're just doing like a ground lay or something like that, you're going to be doing a nice low shelter. You're going to run a solid ridge line. I might, especially if I'm running the tarp like right over the line and I want to keep it taut, you can tie your ridge line, put your tarp through, and put some toggles through on the prusset knots, and you can pull your tarp as tight as you want it to be. Or you can put it on the other end, like you said, and actually adjust the tension that's on there.
Yeah. I also, for like my screen on my hammock, I run the line out, pull it back around my Marlin spike hitch that I hold my hammock off, same one my hammock's suspended to. And I just bring back the rope and I do the same type of prusset knot over itself. And I just use it to adjust the loop. Almost essentially like a whoopee sling.
So, and you may be able to correct me on this, Ben. I'm not 100% sure. I'm just picturing that in my head. If you're using a single strand of rope going back over the same rope, it's technically not a prusset knot so much as a modified clove hitch. But a clove hitch basically is just a an underdeveloped press-it knot.
Maybe there is a better name. The
I
end result,
once again, I can show you how to tie it. Couldn't tell you if I'm right or wrong on the
the
naming off it.
result
Maybe someone can
is
chime
the
in there.
rope sits around the other rope in the exact same manner. I just have to like with the normal press it knot, I guess you make a loop and you just fold it over itself 3-4 times and then pull it tight.
Yep.
With this, I just have to sort of I do 3 loops, run it over itself, 3 loops inside, so the two come out down the same spot, and I pull it tight. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 5. 3 is usually my number, and that gets me what I need. So it's some kind of modified version of the same concept, and I have 2 on either side. There's also a type where it only works one way, where all your loops are on one side of the rope.
Yeah, and I can't remember what the name of that one is either, to be honest with you. I see Chris talking about a taut line hitch. I just wanted to ask so we can hear while we're chatting. Is that the same as a trucker's hitch, the taut line hitch? Because I think I know just trucker's hitch. It's like making a loop in a line that you can pull and kind of get a levering action to once again kind of adjust the tightness on a line. But I'll wait for Chris to write back on that because I was going to bring that up later. But yeah, press it hitch or press it knot. It's a marvelous knot to know, especially if you do anything with tarps and hammocks. It's used a lot because it gives you a super big amount of adjustability. In a pinch, I don't recommend it, but in a pinch, you can actually use it for ascending a rope as well.
Yes.
It's a little trickier, but you can do it because you have to move the knot up, keep your loop out, and you move the knot up, and then you can use the knot as a handhold, and then you move the other one up, and you kind of do this two-handed shimmy up. It's not ideal, it's not comfortable, but it will work, as well as you can use it as a safety knot if you're doing some climbing or lowering for the same reason. If you clip into the loop and something happens and you slip, it'll catch and hold your weight. But as you're going down or up, if you adjust the knot from the top or bottom and slide it along the line as you're going, it'll allow it to free flow. So that's another use that I have used it for. I don't recommend it as your safest knot for like climbing or rappelling, but it's better than going with nothing.
Yeah. I've seen the designs for it. There's also one where you can use it for your feet, but there's I think another line you have to be able to pull up to pull the knot up.
Yeah, you put an open slip knot on the bottom and you kind of tie it off to your waist or ankle, and as you said, you kind of use that to pull it up. It's complicated. It will work. There's easier ways. I mean, these are kind of like you have no other methods or you want to challenge yourself, I guess. But I mean, to me, it's like a last ditch effort. This is what you got. This is what you're working with. It will work. You're going to work for it the entire time, and you are going to be tired going even 10 feet in the air.
Yeah. But honestly, I don't know if I'd get up a rope much other way. Without proper equipment, climbing a rope is tricky enough. Like,
man, I'm way too fluffy to climb ropes. Let's just go with that. 10 years ago, maybe. Now, no.
I would think that it should be easier, but I still don't think I could do it. So I don't know if fluffiness has any effect on this.
Oh, it definitely has an effect on me. Fluffy and age at this point, but
That's my problem.
Yeah, so Chris never really got back on the taut line hitch, but I might as well talk about that while we wait. So, do you use a trucker's hitch at all? Because I use that, once again, that's one I would use on securing a ridge line to 2 trees or something like that, right?
So this is the one that I think of as the knot that sort of disappears.
Yeah, it's basically a slip knot. So, for those of you that are watching, actually, I'm not going to use this rope. I'm going to use this rope because it probably shows up better. Which shows up better there, Ben? Black or white? Probably white.
White.
Okay. So, if I can find the end of this. So basically, a trucker's hitch is you have your line. You put the slip hitch in, like you say. This would go around your object, for instance. Same kind of thing. Then you would follow back through. So if this was your line here, you could actually get a cinch on that and pull back and tighten that up, right? I put the knot in backwards, but you know what I mean. So that's what I know as a trucker's hitch, and I'm wondering if that's what Chris is calling a taut line hitch as well. But yeah, no, it's a really good knot to know as well because, as I said, I use it a lot when I am putting my ridge line up between two trees. Because you tie one end off. I use I think it's called a bowline. Does that sound right?
Bolin's a knot.
So on one end, I'll use a bowline. Then I'll come around my other tree. I'll put a trucker's hitch in, and then I'll get that cinch so I can get a nice, like I like a nice snap and tight ridge line. I
Yeah.
find the less amount of flex in it, the less problems I have with tarps and anything else I may hang off that line.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. Mine are pretty singing tight. Whatever I can suffer into it.
Chris is saying there seems to be a bit of delay in the chat. Like the audio is at a sync, Chris? Or. Because I can.
There's always been a delay between what he sends and what us getting it.
Yeah, there's about an 8 to 10 second delay from when Ben and I are actually talking to when it actually broadcasts on Facebook, if that's what you mean as well. That's just, unfortunately, how it works when you're uploading. Nothing's truly live. But mine's 10 seconds is not a lot of time to try and make a correction. I will tell you that much, because I have tried.
But, yeah, I use the tot line, trucker's hitch, whatever it's called. I'm not great on the names, and there are people out there who can rattle off the names all day long, and some of them are awesome at knots. But I've met some other guys who tell you name every knot, struggle to make them. So
yeah,
you do find what works for you. I oftentimes have a couple of programs that I keep on my phone, and there's a couple of more complex knots that I've done. I think one's called a diamond knot. Beautiful looking knot. But without instructions, I sit down, I'll do it 3-4 times. Then I can do it for the rest of the night. Take my instructions
but then by
away.
next week, you're just out to pasture.
And that's the soft shackles I had. I think that was the type of knot that's on the end. It's more of a decorative knot, but when it's all done, it's a stopper knot. It's an end. It goes on the end of a rope, and it makes a really solid looking, pretty knot. And it's kind of big and bulbous, so you can use it to sort of hook into a loop and not slide out.
Something that would actually be interesting, Ben, is the next time we get together, maybe we'll shoot a how-to video on some of these knots. That way people can see them in... I know there's tons of stuff out there on how to do knots, but we should do our own.
We can do it.
We commonly use, because both of us are typically more hammock-oriented, where we use a lot more rope and knots than you would, say, if you were tenting or... Well, even if you're ground sheltering, you're still going to use some knots and rope for ridge lines and stuff like that. But anyway, we should do that next time we're out. And Chris had mentioned that the trucker's hitch has more steps in it than a taut line hitch. So apparently a taut line hitch is once again a different knot, and I am going to admit that I am not familiar with it.
I may possibly be familiar with it and not know the name.
So another good knot that I like to use, as I mentioned, was the bowline. The bowline is a great knot for securing a line around an object. So the premise of a bowline is you start off with a loop, and probably do this wrong the first time for anybody that's actually watching. So that's a clove hitch that you got there, is it not?
Okay. That's one of my favorite. I wasn't sure. I was trying to get this.
So yeah, there's a bowline. So a bowline, all it does is really give you a loop on the end. But the beauty of a bowline, if you can see that in my video, or my camera there, is there's two little points on it where if you push down and pull, regardless of how much pressure you put on that knot, it'll come undone. So you make your loop, and then you run your line back through the loop around a tree, and you're already tied off on one side.
Yeah. So knots, awesome.
Hey,
awesome
Lawrence,
thing.
how's it going, man? We mentioned you at the start of the video. You just came in a little late.
Hey, buddy.
Sorry, lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Bowlines,
knots, bowlines. But I'd mentioned just as you were getting into that, like there are programs you can put on your phone. There's little pieces of paper, pamphlets and stuff with common knots. It's great. Those are great things to have on you. There's really are.
Awesome website too that animates how to tie the knots, which I'm sure the program on the phone does as well. If I can find it, I will definitely add it to the comments on this video.
But yeah, I use them a lot. I really do, especially when I'm trying to learn a new knot. or a new design, um, because you can't keep them all, like some people can, but I can't keep them all straight, man. And just a visual, something there to show you how to do it. Every now and then find one of those apps or videos that skip a step. It's so frustrating. You're like, how do you get from here to here? There's something missing.
No, I've been there. Like I said, those animated knots, that's how I learned a lot of mine. And yeah, there's a couple I can think off in the back of my head. I always missed one step and the knot would just like fall apart. It would look half right and then it would just be gone. Check the messenger I sent you. Quick explain.
Some of the good videos have multicolored ropes to show you different.
Yeah, and that's the one I'm thinking of. Whatever this website is, it uses two multicolored ropes and it teaches you how to tie knots as well as bites or bites and connections.
Bites and bends and knots.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll come up to a few connectors because that's another really good one for most bushcrafters out there, and it's actually we can talk about it a little now. We'll jump all around here, I'm sure. So connecting two lengths of rope. I'm sure you've been in the situation where you wish you just had a little bit more rope. It happens a lot. Your trees are further apart than you thought, or you're going to put up a bigger tarp or a longer ridge line, or you just want to run something that's going to take more rope. Now, a lot of people will literally just like throw the rope together, an overhand knot or a double overhand knot or something like that. But what they fail to realize is that by not using correct knots when joining rope, you take a lot of the strength of the rope out. I think a double overhand knot, which if anybody's wondering what that is, basically you just take two. Here we go. I'm going to be tied in a knot before the end of this video. I can tell you that right now. It's literally just like you take the two lengths of the rope side by side and you just tie an overhand knot. And that's a common way for most people to tie a line together and off they go. The downside of this is, one, it reduces about 45% of the strength of the rope just out the window. And two, if that tightens up, you're going to end up cutting that out. It's very unforgiving to become on-knotted. But there's better ways. There is better ways, and there's a lot of better ways.
A lot of knots I know can reduce your strength of your rope by 50 to 80%.
Yeah, and maybe that double overhand is more. I'm pulling information from 2003 when I took fire school.
So you're right. I don't know the exact ones, and that's stuff that, again, like, do your research, find out the type of ropes you're using, what works well with those ropes. Certain knots work better with two different size ropes.
Lawrence Camo just said he cuts his rope frequently because of the double overhanded knot. Well, Lawrence, just for you, good sir, I am going to show you a very easy way to put two lengths of rope together. Technically, this is for joining two pieces of rope of different diameter, but it will work just as well for two lengths of the same diameter. So what this knot is technically for is that thicker rope that you seen Ben show there earlier in the video. And it's not really a knot, it's a bend. But so say this is your thicker rope. The black rope is going to be thicker. You just make a loop, and I'm sorry if I'm shouting into the mic at this point because it's literally under my chin. And you take your second, like your tag end from your other one. And if you can see, I have the short end on top, the deal end out on bottom. Take the tag end of your smaller diameter rope, come in through the back, around the whole thing. And then if you drop it down in there, that's what's called a square knot, which a lot of people get. And that is semi-okay. The problem with that is it does not typically come on tied as easy. So the one that you want to do is called a Beckett bend. And all you're going to do is shift it behind the original line. So I'm going to flip that over, which is going to make it completely insane. But anyway, by flipping that over, and if we do a video, I will do a better explanation of this. That will allow that to still tie tight, but it once again gives you those little sections, if you can see that behind my fingers, where if you pull that down, that's going to make that knot come on tied incredibly easy regardless of how much pressure you put on that line. So there's another one like that. I can't think of what it's called, so I'll leave it alone. But yeah, a lot of people trying to hit the Beckett bend, which is what I just showed you, hit a square knot, still works fine. Don't get me wrong. You ever hear the expression, if you can't tie knots, tie lots? It's a very true expression as long as you're willing to give up the rope at the end of it. Because you probably won't be retrieving your rope back without some difficulty.
I have two Hennessy hammocks for my daughters, and it has a system. Instead of tying a knot, you just keep weaving it back and forth between itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you go all the way around the tree and come back and cross over itself, and then you come up and go inside the loop,
Yeah.
and then you keep like figure eights around itself all the way up, and then just tie one off like a stopper type knot at the end. And I've held the girls up on hammocks for that. They don't slip and slide anything, but I guess it does absolutely nothing to reduce the strength of the rope.
Yeah. And as if you're not like, what reduces the strength of the rope, and maybe you can correct me more on this, or somebody commenting will. Every time you put a bend in it, it's a pressure amplifier, and certain types of bends and the way it joins and rubs and friction is what's taking the strength out of your rope. So if you can't tie knots, tie lots. Yes, it'll work, but the reality is every one of those knots is technically eating away at the life or strength of your rope. So if you have a very low strength rope, sometimes that tie lots philosophy will end up biting you in the butt because you end up taking so much of the strength of the rope out, you end up defeating the purpose of even trying to put the knot in. If that makes any kind of sense.
An improper knot basically cuts itself off, right? So as the rope tightens, it's tightening around itself, and it's pinching itself off. It's squeezing its life, and it's still under strain. So it's got an outside stress trying to squeeze it, and then another stress trying to pull it apart. It just creates a huge stress point. And,
exactly.
And that's where it'll fail.
So I got another little one for joining two ropes, just while I'm on it before I forget about it, and this might help Lawrence a little bit. This is still, it's a bite. You may end up cutting your rope to get this out because it may not come out. It might. Just the way this knot works is kind of neat. You ever hear of a hammerhead knot?
No.
Okay, so there might be a different name to this. I've always heard it as a hammerhead. Basically, it's tied two overhand knots on the opposite pieces of rope. So the white rope you would take and you would just tie an overhand knot around the black rope. As such, just a simple overhand knot. Underhand knot, whichever way you want to look at it. And yeah, it's just a simple knot on that black rope. And then come up and do the same thing with the black rope on the white rope. So you got two overhand knots just like that, right? And when they come together,
oh yes,
they'll bind together. And that makes it doesn't take a whole lot of the strength of the rope out, but it's not super forgiving for coming undone. The benefit is you can actually pull them apart like this, but I mean, you can't really do anything with that, honestly. You're still going to end up with those two little knots at the end of it that you might potentially have to cut out.
Yeah.
Like I said, sure. that may be named something completely different, Ben. So if it's not a hammerhead knot, I don't know. It's just what I've always called it and what I've always been told it was called.
But like what you just said there, like sometime when we get together, we should definitely try to do a video of some of the knots we use and like, and we'll see if we can get the correct names and descriptions out available so that when we do it and people look at it, they'll know what we're talking about.
So, Chris says, aren't knots meant to be permanent though? Hitches and bites are reversible ones, right? Well, yes, no, and maybe. This is coming solely from my experience with the fire department and some other stuff here. It's also known as a uni-to-uni knot. Okay, fair enough. So knots not always meant to be permanent. Knots are a walking device. No, how does that work? Leave that with me. I want to get my words right in my head before I get out from this. But technically, a bite is usually a loop on a line. So a bite is when you're left with some sort of tag that you can work with. A hitch is generally like you get a half hitch. So if you were around an object like my finger, you would do a half hitch or a full hitch. And it's kind of like a half knot in my eyes. But you know what? Why don't you talk a little bit there, Ben? Because I know you got something in your hands. I'm going to actually look up the definition.
Well, I was actually just experimenting, thinking about the things you said. But yeah, I mean, pull it up, put some links in. I think that there are much better people at explaining this stuff, but the subject still bears talking about. When you're going in the woods, I mean, you want to take rope. You want to take rope that you're comfortable with, that does the job. you don't want to take so much rope that it's encumbrance of your trip. And I have fallen in that trap where I've taken like a big spool of this, a couple of skeins of paracord, and realized that this is way too much bulk for my gear. But overthinking things, oh, maybe I'll need this, maybe I'll need that. And I've really narrowed it down to some smaller ropes do a lot of the jobs that I don't need the bigger ropes for. And like I said, a lot of times now my tarps are held down with this mason line. Lightweight, comes in a spool, and honestly, I don't mind cutting it up. I do carrot it out. Occasionally, I'll just burn it. I know, naughty me. Environmentalists will contact us now and tear me apart.
I know nothing about it. I don't know who you are. I have no association with you outside this podcast. All right, so I've actually found the definitions of each one of these, and I've been using them incorrectly as well. So a knot is tied in a rope or a piece of webbing. A hitch connects a rope to another object, like a carabiner or even another rope. A bend is a knot that joins two ropes together. Thus, the Beckett bend makes sense. And a bight is a section of rope between the ends. So there you go. There's the official definitions of all the terms we've been throwing around, and I'm going to continue to misuse them because I'm not going to remember that.
And I was going to say, I'm sure I knew that, but I would never be able to.
Yeah, once upon a time, I'm sure somebody told it to me. I am sure they told us that during ropes and knots at fire school.
You go down to the wharf and find some of the old fishermen, and they'll talk about knots and bends and bites and tell you're blue in the face.
Well, it's an interesting, boring subject. It's not very tactile. There's not a lot of excitement involved in it, but it's incredibly depthful about the knowledge you can have with ropes, knots, and everything else.
And the thing is, it's kind of a dying art in the fact that there's a lot of gimmicks out there. You can buy these, the Alienware stuff, the little loops and stuff. Rather than knowing how to tie the knot, you just run the rope through it and you hook it over this loop and this little piece of metal, and it hooks itself in. A lot of guys use the Dutch wear hooks and stuff on their hammocks. You don't have to know the knots anymore. And the whoopee slings, they're pre-made. You go out, you never take them apart. So for a lot of people, there is no interest in learning the knots. They use devices and gimmicks. But the reality is, if you know knots, then it saves you that extra material to carry around and allows you to make in-the-field adjustments that you couldn't do otherwise.
No, I completely agree. Knots are a dying art. That's one of the reasons that, bushcraft can almost be considered a dying art. Because as technology gets more and more prevalent, deforestation, just less woodlands, there's no interest in really knowing how to go out in the woods and just do the do, you know what I mean? And knots is a prevalent part of that, or it was, I already forgot the definitions. I know, right? They're insane. Anyway, it's just one of those things, there's not a lot of use for it anymore in modern society unless you make a point of giving it some use and some benefit.
Well, you tie a load on the back of a truck or a trailer. Everyone has the ratchet straps. And in fact, one of my buddies, when we first got into hammocking, he just brought 2 ratchet straps in, pulled them in, tightened them down to the tightness he wanted, never had to worry about it.
And that's actually brilliant, honestly, but...
Well, it is, except my whoopee slings weigh what, less than an ounce?
Or less than that?
A ratchet strap weighs what, like a pound each?
Depending, I guess. I honestly don't know. I'd have to go measure one, but I know here's 2 whoopee slings, not made out of am steel. I sent you what this was. It's a gigantic acronym. It's UHMRA, blah, 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 blah. And this whole package is, I bet you that's probably 2 ounces, maybe.
Yeah. So, if you have the skill and knowledge, it saves you weight and it allows you to be much more adjustable. I think I had most of my hammock system taken down by the time you showed up, but I had brought 2 tent pegs to staple down 2 ends of my tarp. I never had to use them. There was trees in a good location. I just looped around the trees, tightened it down with a self-adjusting knot of some form, and it worked for me. When we set up, I think I had four different systems of holding my tarp up in on that river. You probably had as many or more.
I was about to say, I know from the pictures we took, it looked pretty elegant. If I have to give it a description, it looked good. But if you were
Yeah.
standing in the mix of it, looking at the spider webs of rope going around, like there, we tied off on everything you can imagine, from roots to trees to rocks to other ropes, and we used good knots to do all of it. Because I mean, once again, I kind of got a little bit of a passion with knots. I went and looked at all the knots he used, and they were good knots. Um, I was kind of sizing you up. I'm not gonna lie, Ben. Like I was like, oh, I wonder what kind of knots he's using. And I mean, you would use the press-it knot. You'd used, I think you'd used
COVID.
a bow, and you'd used a half a dozen different styles of connecting different things as you were going along, and it was all really impressive. And it showed when we came to tear down. The easiest way to pick somebody out that does not fully understand how to tie good knots is how long it takes them to break down at the end of their camping trip. Because you could, unless you cut it, of course,
Yeah.
if you're trying to untie it, you can be like hours trying to get some bad knots out. What was it I was trying to untie, and I ended up using your knife because it just had a bad knot in it. Was it the
Don't
rope I tried to
remember
put my
you.
hammock up with? I
Yeah, we
can't
had to
remember
do
what it
it.
was, but any case, you remember you gave me the knife with the rope hook on it,
Yeah.
and I mean, it still took me a half hour, 45 minutes to get that one knot out when it was all said and done.
And that rope hook, that was an awesome little tool, wasn't it?
Oh, I am still looking for a good one. I
Yeah.
want the exact one you have. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
stalking you at this point, making reference to a joke we made earlier. But I mean, after I went out on the trip with you, I looked. I never had use for whoopee slings because didn't fully understand them. I now own two sets. Tarps was new to me because all I ever used was like the Canadian Tire specials. I now got two good tarps. Um, what else? What else? I'm gonna try and get that rope hook. I don't know what it's actually. Is that legitimately a rope hook?
It comes on a Victorinox knives. It's just a little hook with there's a nub on the end of the hook. But I tell you, for untying knots, I've yet to find anything. If you want to get like onto a piece of string and really put some pressure on it, that thing hooks on. It gives you the whole grip of the knife. It comes right out the center. You can't beat it. What the proper name is or what its
I
intent
don't know.
was?
The only time I've seen something like that before, and it might have been somebody misusing the product, was
Yeah.
when I was younger. I remembered the guys that used hockey. They would use something like that just to tie their skates like
Oh yeah.
ridiculously tight because it would get in there and you could just like pull that thing as hard as you could. And I mean that's the only other I knew I had seen it before, and that's where it was. I forgot to tell you that after I figured it out was with skates, and it was
You
just
know
a.
another thing that
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
that tool was awesome for pulling tent pegs out of the ground too.
I suppose it would, as long as it could fit in the tent bag. I've seen some bigger tent bags,
Well, if
and
it doesn't, you take a loop of rope,
I
hook
suppose, and
over
hook
your,
it over and pull that.
yeah.
There you go.
See? You need your
Um,
rope.
trying to think, there was another knot I wanted. A water knot. That was the other one I wanted to bring up, was a water knot. Because water knot is really good for tying two pieces of webbing together, like web strapping.
Yeah.
It's actually that's exactly what it was meant to do: is tie two ends of strap together to make one solid loop, which would come in handy if you were making your own hammock straps, for instance. Because I have seen people make just one big loop in a hammock strap. They put it around their tree once, twice, whatever they need, and then loop it back into itself to give them that loop on the end and eat up the
Yeah.
rest of it, and then connect like a whoopee sling or something like that, right? To get their fine adjustments in. And a water knot, believe it or not, is an incredibly simple knot because all it is an overhand knot, which is just, your basic old knot that you probably tied in your shoes as a kid. And then you just
Granny
take
knot,
your
we call it.
other piece of webbing and you just follow that knot back through. Like just literally come in the short end and just follow it the entire way around as you're going. And it should come back out here somewhere. And bam, water knot. Once you dress it, of course. And it kind of comes up like something like that.
Isn't it pretty?
And yeah, that's exactly what it's made to do. Now, it doesn't on tie that easy. Once you bind your webbing together, it is together. You're not going to pull that knot out. It is very, very hard to come out. And it doesn't slip when it's wet, I think is where the term water knot came from. And I could be wrong. Somebody will probably correct me. But somebody
Okay.
told me it doesn't slip when it's wet. And where I learned to do this and where I'm getting all my information from is once again the fire service. We use loops of webbing as rescue devices because we tie about 10 feet of webbing into a big loop, carry it in our pocket. If we go into a building and we got to pull somebody out and they're a larger person, we can't carry them, or you're by yourself, you can literally kind of make a harness that just goes around their arms and you just grab the rope and heave, or grab the webbing and heave, right?
Yeah.
And that could potentially be a wet environment, and I know that won't slip. And I can say that from experience. I pulled one of those rescue Randy dolls up and down flights of stairs and probably through 6 or 8 rooms in the course of my training, and it never failed. I still have the exact same piece of webbing sitting in my fire gear outside. That I got that in 2003, maybe, no, probably earlier than that, 2002, and it's still
Yeah.
just as good. The knot has never moved.
We often used in search and rescue the figure 8 knot is quite a favorite of the group.
Okay, I got some stuff to show you with a figure 8 knot next time we're together. I can do fancy knots with the figure 8, but those are all literally just ornamental, nothing more.
Yeah.
But the big one you probably use in search and rescue, figure 8 and a bite.
Yeah,
So
probably.
you end up with a loop at the end.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a figure 8 and a bite.
Yeah.
Another good thing with the figure 8 is you can use it for joining 2 pieces of rope as well. It retains a ton of its strength. I think you only lose like 11% of the rope strength or something like that. But it is very time consuming and it can potentially be annoying to do. So you tie a figure 8 knot at the end of your line, and then you would take your below second line, and these have to be same size rope. And just like your water knot, you would follow that through.
Yeah. And like you said, it creates a very strong knot without sacrificing a lot of strength. And it's also generally fairly easy to untie because you just
Yes.
fold it over and it generally will pull right back through.
Yeah. So there's if it'll cinch down here. Yeah. There's something did not go right here.
Sorry.
Oh no, I see what I did wrong. I was gonna say it should be right. All I did was I did not go through here.
Last
See, you miss
step.
a step. Anyway, there you go. So that's and if it's all dressed and laying flat, you can see the figure 8. It's called a figure 8 follow through. If anybody wanted to look this knot up, and it's kind of pretty, and it will put your 2 pieces of rope together great. I do recommend for any of these knots, finish them off with an overhand safety knot pulling up the line, and then if for some reason it slips, that'll come in and bind, and you'll never have a problem because this is technically a life safety knot, believe it or
Yeah.
not. And yeah, that only loses like 10% of your rope strength or something like that. It's ridiculously strong and it's easy to untie. But the downfall is it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of dexterity, and it has to be similar sized rope.
Yeah. So I guess the gist of it, I mean, we wanted a subject that we could talk about that we kind of found interesting. And there's a lot of types of rope out there. There's a lot of types of knots out there. There's a lot of things to learn. And this is not something that someone's going to teach you in an hour-long podcast, and especially not necessarily me and you. We know a lot of knots that we are comfortable with using, and it makes our time in the woods enjoyable. Like I said, the names and descriptions sort of evade us sometimes, but we both seen the work we did. And I think we had one problem. We had to shorten an existing rope on your hammock.
Yeah,
And
the rope we. So anybody that doesn't know the story, when Ben and I went on our little camping adventure, Mr. Smart Pants here, me, I forgot my hammock straps. and I ended up having an old piece of rope that came with a real cheap hammock I bought, but it was some
Yeah,
sort of synthetic polymer rope, and it did stretch.
a lot.
So it sucked, honestly. But in any case, we tied it, went to sleep the first night, crawled in, everything was good, woke up in a complete banana shape, almost on the ground. So Ben and I were sitting there staring at it, and it was actually you came up with the idea of putting the toggle on it and retightening it, and it worked great.
Yeah. Yeah, we just put the toggle in it, wrapped it around, and then we took another rope and just looped it around so the toggle couldn't. Sort of like was it the tourniquet style
Yeah,
idea. So,
and it worked amazing. Chris says a monkey fist knot, great for throwing rope long distances. I have to 100% agree with you, Chris. It's a great knot. If you can tie it on the end, it'll give you like a nice big ball to throw. What works even better than that is just put a bucket knot around a rock. It takes literally 10 seconds, and then you don't have to figure out how to do a monkey fist knot. Monkey fist knot is used in a lot of dog toys and stuff like that. It's a very rugged knot, which gives you a very sizable ball of rope. And actually, it's you can, and I'm digressing here, and
I,
I am not claiming any liability for what I'm about to say. A monkey fist knot you can actually use to make a weapon out of, because you can put a small metal ball bearing in it, and you basically have the makings of a blackjack. I have seen them for sale in the States when I used to go down there a little bit, and they are legitimately a self defense weapon. They are 100% illegal in Canada. I will say that now, so nobody go out there and have this idea of throwing a marble in a monkey fist thing and saying it's a self defense weapon. 100% illegal in Canada, and I can't stress that enough. But that's another use for that knot, for, I guess, whatever, whoever wants to know that information.
so I and I'm going to say I do not have it anymore because that's the safe thing to say. But I was trying to learn to do the monkey fist knot a few years ago, and I put it around another knot. So I just made a granny style knot. I made the thing around it, and it was a nice piece of soft white nylon rope. It was gorgeous. And then I back spliced the back, so I had a handle. So I had like a 1.5 foot rope with a nice handle to hook on and a monkey fist on the end. And that is awesomely fun to just swing around like a set of nunchucks and hit trees, rocks, and stuff. It is a lot of fun. If it's illegal, then mine has definitely been destroyed, and I cannot tell you how well it is in this. But no, these all these knots can be a lot of fun. You can spend a lot of time playing with knots. Not only just the knots, but like the bracelets everyone wears, that stuff. Like there's so many designs and stuff for the paracord that you can do. I mean, and the beauty of some of these is then you have a whole bunch of rope that's stored in a relatively small spot, and that's the point of the bracelets, I think, originally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like 30 feet of rope on one of these things or something like that. I think mine's a little bit more because I needed one that would fit my wrist. But a basic one you would buy online, they claim, is about 30 feet of rope or something. I can't
Well,
remember.
hold on, I'll show you some.
All right, well, Ben's gone doing his thing there. What was exactly was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. So I guess we'll just wait for Ben to come back. But yeah, oh yeah, sorry. The good thing about ropes and knots for anybody that works a desk job or doesn't even work a desk job is you don't need a whole lot of rope to practice. It's something that you can just pick up, get yourself maybe two ends about 2 feet, and you can just sit at your desk and try them if you have a couple seconds. And I find myself doing that a lot at work. I at my job I'm on the phone more than I really want to be. I'm not a big phone person, but while I'm chatting to people in other businesses, I will literally just play with knots. I find myself doing it a lot without even knowing it because I do got a couple junks of paracord on my desk. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. What you got there, Ben? It looked pretty
It's the
interesting.
same thing as the bracelet. We got a length here. I mean, it's a little over 1 foot long. We, me and my wife got into making the bracelets there for a while, especially the kids. And we made these just to tie our boats on.
Hmm.
And we have lengths that are over 50 feet of rope in them. And they're like 6 feet long. And that is an awesome thing. Like if you want a lanyard for your boat or whatever, just so you can tie it down.
Okay, if that's
And
50 feet of rope, then this must be 10 feet of rope. I must be
uh,
way off of my numbers.
this here piece here is nothing. This might be 20 feet or so.
Yeah, so the bracelets must be like 10 feet then. For some reason, I had in my head it was 30 feet, but that would be ridiculous judging by your.
But we bought the whatever the standard length when you buy it is, and that's what we started
Yeah, I can't
doing.
remember. That comes to like 31 meters, which is like 100 feet.
Yeah, so we have them that are 100 feet long now. Uh, and it makes decent ropes. But honestly, like there's a formula you do, and you make your loop and then you do it. But if you do them real tight, you end up with a couple of inches out. It's not have the braid, like the protective jacket over. Just I tend to make mine tighter than my wife. My wife's work out to the numbers better.
Mm.
In that case, I think you can see it here. You'll end up getting something that looks like that.
Yeah, see, when I made mine, I did that right to the end. Mine is snapping tight to the point where it'll actually like
Yeah.
hold its shape if you stick it in a certain way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, same kind of deal. So you know what I mean. The tighter you make them, the more rigid they tend to be. And I tied my bracelet specifically that way so it wouldn't get tight on my wrist.
So
Which,
that's twice the length of yours, easy.
yeah, easy.
Yeah.
But
But
Chris made a good point here too. Ropes and knots. You can make axe handles, knife handle wraps, just key lanyards, knife lanyards, rifle slings. Like there's literally your imagination is the limit when it comes to ropes and knots. If you really want to get into it, anything you can dream. Like I've seen dog leashes made out of that. A buddy of
yeah.
mine has a Saint Bernard, and that Saint Bernard used to break everything they used as a lashing for it, minus like steel cable, which they didn't want to, just in case, he basically hurt himself on it. So anyway, we tied up one of these. I think it's the 910 paracord. It's the thicker stuff, tons of strands in it. Anyway, we braided something up in that, and that seemed to work for a little while. The weakest point was the clasp. I think it ended up breaking.
My 30-pound dog has busted a dozen clasps.
So you can picture a Saint Bernard. This thing's like part horse. It sits on the couch with its front legs on the floor.
Yeah. I find those metal clips have poor shock loading, and when especially in the cold, they tend to shatter a bit.
Yeah.
But I've even seen someone do backpack straps. It was like a triple wide set. It's a similar design, but it's 3 times as wide.
Yeah, there's tons of braids you can do with this thing. Once again, just YouTube paracord braids. And as you said, they can get wide, narrow.
Yeah. It's great entertainment, great fun. This design, actually, there's a neat video where they talk about this design. I think it's the same design you used.
Yep.
It takes quite a while to unravel.
Yeah, it's not a quick release method, that's for sure.
There's another one where you undo one end of it and you just pull and it's just zims right out.
I seen that. I did not think it would hold as much rope, is why I went with this style here. And I wanted to use 2 colors of rope, so my initial lines are a different color than the braid, right? So.
And that's it. Everyone has its purpose, its time, its reason. But if you just need rope and you got some time, it'll only take you a couple of minutes to unravel this. But that other design, Buddy was literally doing it in a couple of seconds, which is kind of neat. If you need a quick release, get the rope in a rush, that's the way to go. With your method, if you're trying to get it to save your buddy who's floating down the river, then, well, you might be better off trying something to find a stick.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is not a speed method at all. Another reason I made it that way was because I didn't want it to be too easy to unravel, because then I would be tempted to do it a lot more often. When I made mine when it was a fad, when survival bracelets were a fad. They're still kind of a fad, but it faded out. But when they were a big fad is when I made mine. I'm like, that is a great idea. I'll always have some rope on my wrist. So the first one I made, I used it within like 2 days to do something stupid. So the next one I made, I'm like, no, I'm going to make it so I actually have to work to unravel that. So I'll actually keep it until I need it.
Yeah. 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 It's such a fad now still that you can buy kits at the dollar store to make them, right?
Okay, and yeah, I haven't seen them here locally. I have seen the paracord bracelets. They come with like a compass and a whistle on them, and maybe a striker and some other junk.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go to the craft section, don't ask why I know this, they sell little kits of pre-measured out ropes for making bracelets, and a little tiny buckles, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
See,
and anybody that's wanting to make a bracelet, just my 2 cents on this, you need to get buckles that have a slight taper to them. If you can see those are not 100% flat.
yeah,
If you get the 100% flat ones, the bracelet feels incredibly uncomfortable on your arm. The first couple I made were with 100% flat buckles.
yeah, and you can get beautiful ones on Amazon, Wish, all these sites that have these little ferro rods, little ceramic knives and stuff in them, all kinds of little gimmicky things if you want, whatever
On
you're
that
into.
note, what Chris said, don't forget the paracord grenade. Those were a big fad there for a little while. Do you remember those?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You put your fishing line in it, your couple of hooks, maybe a flashlight.
Yeah, they were neat. I never made one myself, but I did see some pre-made ones.
Yeah, I seen them a couple times. I kind of wanted to buy them, but then I realized half the stuff in them is probably junk I wouldn't be happy with anyways.
Yeah, I'd almost want to make my own.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, but again, here's the thing: is you build this little grenade, this thing, it's full of kit that you may need, and the good thing is you won't pull it out unless you absolutely need it. But the reality is, I'm taking it in. I kind of hope I am using it.
yeah,
If I use it, I'll replenish it for my next trip. And I know I'm always switching out my gear.
yeah, and I'm guilty for that too. I don't think I've ever gone in the woods with the same pack twice. It's
Yeah,
always changed.
yeah. So,
Um, yeah, so we kind of touched on rope. We touched on knots. We rambled a little bit. And as you said there at one point, it's a very vast subject. The point for me anyway with this podcast was to get you guys thinking, to do your own little bit of research. I like I said, if I can find that website, and I know I have it saved either on my phone or somewhere on my desktop here, it has animated color coded knots. Just go on there and play with it a little bit if you're just looking for something to do. Knots in the woods will save your butt. They will. It just makes your life simpler. Especially when it's cold, if you know how to do good knots, you don't have to take your gloves off. There's a lot of good knots that don't take tons of dexterity. Once again, a good knot will come on, like you should be able to untie a half decent knot to some degree, or at least that's one of my standards for a knot. I always want to reclaim all my rope back because I'm cheap. There's no other way of saying it. I'm just cheap. I can't afford to go buy new rope every time, so.
well, that's the thing too, though. If you know you're going to be able to retrieve it, you buy decent rope, right? If you're going to cut it up and throw it out every time, then you're going to buy cheap rope.
Exactly. And you're far
Um,
better off buying some good rope and learning how to use it properly.
yeah, and that's the funny thing. Like two of the ropes I take probably the most for guidelines and stuff is this lash it stuff, which I treat a bit like gold. That's why I still have it. It gets. I'll clean this all up. I'll wrap it right back on a spool like it originally was when we finish this, and it'll go on my gear. And I only take this out when I want something I really want to depend on. If I'm doing something quick and dirty, then I have the Mason's line, which looks almost the same. It's a little cheaper to feel, and I'll use that to do some stuff. But this, I don't worry about. I can cut it up and toss it out when I need a short length, and I don't want a whole bunch laying around the campsite. This is what I'll use. And when I want something I'm going to reuse, I use this type of system.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm going to start with this Kevlar line. Next time we're together, I'd like to compare this to that lash it that you have and see how similar it is. Because for 1,000 pound weight rating, and I think I only paid, I'm going to say $18 for, it's either 50 feet of it. Yeah, I'm going blind. I'm 100% going blind. But yeah, there's 50 feet of it. And so I might have overpaid a little bit for it, but if it works, that's a good investment in my opinion. Because like I said, we talked about maybe making a ridge line or using this to make a ridge line for my hammock system. Or I could use it for a tarp ridge line. It's a little thin, so I worry about chafing and stuff like that, but I think I can work with it, honestly. I don't think it should cut into anything too bad.
No, if you're really concerned, and that's where maybe a little metal loop might come in handy.
Like a beaner? Like one of those Dutch beaners?
Yeah.
So.
Or even a carabiner if you want it, like something.
Well, I did just order a whole bunch of them.
but yeah, then your rope is against that, and your rope won't chafe through this, and this won't chafe through your rope, and you just loop that over the other. There's thousands of ways to set it up, and you're gonna find the way that works best for you. Um, but I know I was at the Army surplus a while back, and I found these solid metal rings, not split rings or anything.
Yep.
These were kind of big, but I was looking for slightly smaller ones because there's so many things you can do with those, especially for like loops off tarps and stuff.
Mm,
A lot of tarps
I know
have those
exactly
little.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
If you have those, tying that little Kevlar rope to it, you don't have to worry. But if you tie it right to like the webbing, it may chafe through the webbing.
No, good point there. And just mentioning that Army Navy surplus because we are Nova Scotia based. If a lot of the supplies we talked about tonight, you can. It's that one by you there. Is it Enfield?
No, it's
Elmsdale?
102 surplus.
Yeah, 102 surplus. Anyway, it's
Outside of Elmsdale.
sorry, go ahead.
Just outside of Elmsdale.
Yeah, so it's just outside Elmsdale. If anybody knows where the tractor dome is, it's I think the next exit heading towards Halifax. And there's a little petro can up there, and there's another little strip mall on the left. Anyway, you just go up the exit, swing to the right at the first set of lights, turn left. You kind of go down this sketchy back road, and there's a Frenchie's attached to it. That's what I was trying to remember what was attached to it. There's a Frenchie's. So if
You
you're
can see
driving
it
down
from
the
the highway.
highway, it says 102 Frenchie's or something Frenchie's anyway, and the surplus is literally attached to that.
Yeah. It's 102 surplus, and the Frenchies is on the backside from the highway. And there's always a sign out front and stuff. You can see from the highway. It's going towards Halifax. It's just past the exit. Coming from Halifax, it's just before you get to the exit. And yeah, it's not a bad little store. I always give them a hard time that their prices are a little higher than they should be. But
that's the only thing. They do have unique items, but the prices are always a little sketchy. Or not
I got
always sketchy, but they can be sketchy.
I gave them a couple of Google reviews and went in looking at like their down sleeping bags. And honestly, I can buy a brand new down sleeping bag for the equivalent of their military ones. A single piece, not a full set. If it was a full set for that price, I'd pay it in a second. And I'm going in, they got rips, and the down is half missing out of it, and they're still asking for full price. So
You definitely got to inspect everything before you buy it. Just don't grab it and run. That is a warning I will give you. It's a good store. I'm not saying anything bad about it, but be wary of the price and check over what you got in your hand.
Yeah. And they have some awesome sales and stuff. So go in, look around. It's definitely worth it. Give them a hard time. Maybe they'll smarten up on some of the prices.
I've always wanted to buy one of their parachutes. Just cause. They sell legitimate parachutes and they're unpacked. So you got to figure out how to repack this sucker. But I still want to buy one. But once again, the price is just ridiculous on it. I'm pretty sure I could probably buy a new parachute for only maybe like 25% more.
Imagine the size of the winter shelter we could build with one of those.
I'm thinking, imagine the hammock I can make with that. I'll just take everything in my hammock with me. But anyway, once again, I have slightly digressed. I seem to have a habit of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we should probably wrap this up before we end up completely off topic.
yeah, we're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes. Once again, I could say more and I could show more knots, but it's just going to be more of the same.
Like I said, get out there, play with some rope, practice with it, look into it. Like I said, we get any really good prices or deals, we'll definitely pass them on. But it's great stuff to play with and learn. Amsteel has its whole series of how to operate it and how to splice it together and stuff. Worth learning. If we do get together and do some knot stuff together, I'll definitely have some links to that to show you some of the stuff I know. And
yeah, and I would definitely. Okay, I'm gonna feel like a complete idiot for this knots thing that I've been rambling on about this website. It's dirt simple. It's animatedknots.com.
Yes, I've used that.
And it is color coded, and it does break it down fairly easy for you. It's good. I like it. It's a good way to learn some knots. There is a couple other websites, but that was the one I was trying to think of.
Very good. Well, We don't even need a disclaimer for this one.
Nope. Get out. Have fun. Don't trust your life to a piece of rope unless you know it's rated for it. That's all I can say.
But what they used to say on hammock forums, never hang yourself higher than you're willing to fall.
I have heard that, and you know what? That is a brilliant piece of information.
Never hang your hammock higher than you're willing to fall.
And that's good information. And like with everything we talk about, I am going to throw the disclaimer in there. Use with caution. We're just giving you information. We hope you try some stuff, but do it safely. Test things before you rely on it. And as Ben said, never hang higher than you're willing to fall.
It's true though, right?
Oh, it's 100% true. I mean, I've fallen out of a hammock, and it is not fun. The line didn't break. Me trying to get out, I might have been a tiny bit inebriated, and I fell out of the hammock. And it's not fun, man, falling out of a hammock.
I think we found out both of us have also flipped over in the hammock and been held by the screen.
Yes, it's actually surprising how tough those screens are. I found the pictures off it, which is the funny thing. I'll send them to you. But
sorry. No.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me, Ben. Is there anything else you want to add in on that?
No, I'm good. We're looking forward to the next one. I know we got a ton of subjects we want to touch on, and I'm looking forward to any feedback anyone has.
Yes,
good,
for
bad.
Sure. As always, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah. Oh, another thing I wanted to throw out there, just because on the video that I'll be uploading in the very near future from the gathering, there is some swag pictures from some of the stuff we have added into the Atlantic Bushcraft swag bag. So definitely look at that. We have some neat stuff that Ben and his family have been working on there. They've been doing a wonderful job on some of the stuff. So to Ben, his wife, and his kids there, thank you very much, Ben, for doing all that stuff. I can take no credit on any of the advertising merchandise that has been done up to this point, but definitely take a look at it. We gave out some keychains.
Yeah, we gave
gathering.
I think it was 17 to 20.
Yeah, I was trying to think how many there was. There was a good bag of them anyway, and we gave them all away, and they were absolutely beautiful. I got some pictures of those I'll put up, and watch the video for the rest.
Yeah. And anyone who got one, that's a limited edition. We're not making any more of those.
They looked very meticulous. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, we may make similar ones, but those were for the gathering. So if you have one, there won't. You have a limited amount. I think there is only 17 or something of them. So.
But all right, ladies and gents, that's it for us. We hope you all enjoyed it. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the start there. It always seems to be something, and I take the blame for that, as I normally do, because, me and electronics never go together good. But get out there, have fun, get dirty, play safe.